The road surface changed texture, sounding like gravel even though it looked smooth. At first, it was just a faint shift under the tires, a soft, granular hiss replacing the steady hum of asphalt. I thought I'd drifted onto the shoulder without noticing. The steering wheel gave a slight tremor, the kind you feel when rubber meets loose stone. Instinctively, I corrected, nudging the car back toward the center of the lane. The sound didn't change. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The road behind me gleamed under my taillights, dark and seamless. No loose edges, no pale scatter of stones. Ahead, my headlights stretched over a ribbon of perfect blacktop, freshly paved by the look of it. No debris, no cracks, but the tires insisted otherwise. Gravel unmistakably, a dry, restless crunch that rose and fell with my speed. I eased off the accelerator. The sound softened but didn't disappear. Instead, it became more distinct, less like tires on gravel, more like something shifting beneath them. Individual pieces, not uniform, uneven. I rolled down the window. Cold air slipped inside, carrying nothing but the quiet of open land. No wind through trees, no distant engines, just that sound, louder now, unfiltered. A brittle, whispering churn. It didn't echo. That was what unsettled me first. Gravel should scatter noise, bounce it outward. This stayed tight, pressed close to the car, as if it belonged only to me. I drove on. The road cut through low hills, the kind that swallowed light. No street lamps, no buildings, not even reflective markers. Just the painted center line gliding beneath me in steady intervals. The sky above was a dull, uniform gray, like fog that hadn't decided whether to settle or lift. The vibration deepened. Not stronger exactly, more layered. I could feel it through the steering column, a faint, irregular pulsing that didn't match the rotation of the wheels. I checked the dashboard. Tire pressure was normal. No warning lights. Still, I slowed further, coasting at a cautious speed. The sound adjusted with me, but not proportionally. At 20 kilometers per hour, it should have softened into a gentle crunch. Instead, it stretched out, longer, drawn, like something dragging itself across a surface. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Just the road, I muttered, though I wasn't sure what I meant by that anymore. The first visual distortion came a few minutes later. My headlights caught a patch ahead where the surface shimmered, as if heat rose from it. But the air was cold enough that my breath fogged faintly inside the car. As I approached, the shimmer didn't resolve. It stayed vague, a trembling layer over the asphalt. The sound grew sharper. Not louder, sharper, like edges forming within it. I drove over the patch. For a brief second, the steering wheel jerked in my hands, a small, deliberate twitch to the left. Not enough to pull the car off course, just enough to feel intentional. The vibration surged, then settled. I checked the mirror again. The shimmer was gone. Only smooth road remained, reflecting my taillights in a clean, uninterrupted line. I swallowed and kept going. The further I drove, the more the mismatch spread. Sections of the road began to feel different from one another, though they looked identical. One stretch would hum like polished concrete while sounding like loose gravel. Another would feel soft, almost padded, yet produce a brittle clatter that didn't fit. I tried to map it in my head, mark the transitions, but they didn't stay consistent. When I looked back, the boundaries were gone. At some point, I realized I hadn't passed a single sign in over 10 minutes. No mile markers, no turnoffs, no intersections, just that endless strip. The painted center line began to waver. Not physically, it remained straight, but the way it moved under my headlights felt wrong. It slid past in uneven intervals, sometimes stretching, sometimes compressing, as if the distance between the dashes changed without warning. The sound followed suit. Crunch, pause, a drawn-out scrape, then a rapid succession of tiny impacts too quick to count. My speed hadn't changed. I pressed the brake gently. The car slowed, but the sound didn't align with the deceleration. It lagged, then rushed to catch up, like it was syncing itself to my movement after the fact. A thought slipped in, unwelcome and immediate. It wasn't reacting to the road. It was reacting to me. I turned the wheel slightly to the right, testing it. The front of the car responded normally, drifting toward the edge of the lane. The sound shifted subtly but unmistakably. The crunching concentrated under the right side, while the left softened into a dull hum. I straightened out. The sound evened again. I tried it once more, this time to the left. The same response. Localized, precise, aware. I let out a slow breath and flexed my fingers on the wheel. My palms were damp. "Okay," I said aloud, as if speaking might anchor something. "Okay." I accelerated. The engine rose, smooth and predictable. The car surged forward. The sound surged with it, but not in volume. In density. It thickened, layered over itself, until it resembled something more complex than gravel. Something organic in its inconsistency. Like thousands of small things moving in unison, then breaking apart. The vibration became a pattern. Not random anymore. It pulsed in intervals that almost felt like signals. I forced my eyes ahead, refusing to look down at the road itself. The headlights carved out a tunnel of visibility, and beyond that was nothing. No horizon, no reference point, just gray. Then the reflections started. At first, I thought it was moisture, thin patches catching the light differently. But as I watched, I noticed the reflections didn't match the angle of my headlights. They appeared at impossible orientations, glinting sideways, even upward, like facets. I slowed again, heart thudding. The sound quieted, compressing into a tight, brittle whisper. I leaned forward slightly, trying to see. The surface still looked smooth, perfectly paved, but the reflections suggested depth. Tiny, shifting planes that weren't there a moment before. And beneath the car, the gravel shifted in response to my attention. Not my speed, not my direction, my attention. The instant I focused on a particular patch ahead, the sound gathered there, intensifying before I even reached it. I froze, hands locked on the wheel. "No," I whispered. I forced myself to look away, staring at the center line instead. The sound dispersed. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my gaze back to the road as a whole. It remained even. I tested it again, deliberately fixing my eyes on a spot near the edge. The sound crept toward it, anticipating. My throat tightened. It wasn't just reacting to my movement. It was following where I looked. I jerked my gaze upward, into the blank sky. For a moment there was silence. Not just a reduction, the complete absence of that granular noise. The tires still rolled, the engine still hummed, but the gravel vanished. Relief flooded in so quickly it made me dizzy. Then I glanced back down. The sound returned all at once. Loud, dense, almost aggressive. The steering wheel vibrated sharply, as if in reprimand. I flinched. "Okay," I said again, louder this time. "Okay, I get it." My voice sounded thin inside the car. I kept my eyes forward, unfocused, trying not to fixate on any one part of the road. It worked, in a way. The sound stabilized, settling into a constant, uneasy churn. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time had lost its edges. Then, gradually, something else crept in. A second layer to the sound. Quieter, softer. Not the sharp crunch of gravel, but a faint, rhythmic brushing. Like something passing over something else. Back and forth. Back and forth. I held my breath and listened. It wasn't random. It had cadence. A pattern that almost resembled. No. I shook my head, but the thought had already formed. Breathing. I pressed my foot harder on the accelerator. The engine responded, the car leaping forward. The sound swelled, and the softer layer beneath it became clearer, stretching out into a long, drawn inhale, then compressing into a short, uneven exhale. The entire road beneath me seemed to rise and fall in microscopic increments, too small to see, but enough to feel through the chassis. The steering wheel pulsed in time with it. Inhale, exhale. I stared straight ahead, eyes wide, refusing to look down, refusing to acknowledge it. But the realization settled anyway, heavy and undeniable. It wasn't gravel. It was contact. Countless tiny points shifting, adjusting, responding. Not to the tires, to the weight above them. To me, I don't remember deciding to stop. My foot moved on its own, pressing the brake until the car slowed, and finally rolled to a halt in the middle of that empty, lightless road. The engine idled. The headlights stretched forward. The sound continued, even without motion. A soft, restless shifting beneath the car. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Gradually, the rhythm deepened. The breathing grew slower, heavier, as if something vast had become aware of stillness. Waiting, I sat there, hands frozen on the wheel, and for the first time, I understood what the sound had been all along. Not gravel, not even movement. It was the road trying to adjust to me, to accommodate something it didn't quite understand, or something it had just begun to. The steering wheel gave a faint, deliberate twitch. The car dipped, barely perceptible, like settling into soft ground. And beneath me, the countless shifting points aligned. The sound changed, not to gravel, not to anything I recognized, but to something disturbingly close to a voice. Testing, learning, forming. I didn't wait to hear what it would say. The road was empty in a way that felt deliberate, like something had cleared it out ahead of me. No lights, no reflectors, no distant glow of a town on the horizon. Just a ribbon of asphalt stretched through blackness, the beam of my headlights dissolving into it like it had no end. I had been driving for hours. The hum of the tires had flattened into a constant, almost comforting drone, and the steering wheel felt warm and faintly slick beneath my palms. Every now and then I'd flex my fingers just to remind myself they were still there, still mine. That was when I first noticed the sound change. It was subtle, so subtle I thought I'd imagined it. A faint crunching beneath the tires, like loose gravel, though the road ahead looked perfectly smooth. I eased off the accelerator slightly, listening. The sound softened, then returned as I pressed down again. Not quite right. Too irregular. Too separate. I leaned forward, peering through the windshield. The headlights carved out their narrow cone, revealing nothing but uninterrupted asphalt. No debris, no texture shift, no reason for the sound. Then something flickered at the edge of the beam. I thought it was a reflection at first, light catching on something uneven, but as I watched, it resolved into a shape. Then another pair of footprints. They glowed faintly, as if lit from within, a pale, cold color that didn't match my headlights. Not white, not blue, something in between, something that didn't belong on any spectrum I recognized. They appeared directly on the asphalt, just within the reach of my lights. I didn't understand what I was seeing until they moved. Not faded, not blinked out. Moved. One lifted, though there was nothing to lift, and placed itself forward. Then the other followed. A steady rhythm. Left, right, running. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the leather creaking softly under my fingers. The car was still moving at a steady pace, just under 80 kilometers per hour. The footprints kept pace exactly, staying a fixed distance ahead of the hood. They didn't slide or smear. Each step appeared cleanly, as if pressed into something soft, though the asphalt remained unmarked. No indentations, no dust kicked up, just light. I slowed. The engine's pitch dropped, the car easing down to 60. The footprints slowed with me, not by shortening stride, not by changing position gradually. They simply adjusted. The rhythm remained perfectly human. If a human could run without effort, without breath, without any visible body to carry it. Left, right. I felt something tighten in my chest. I pressed the accelerator harder. The engine responded, the car surging forward, speed climbing, 80, 90, 100. The wind began to whisper louder around the edges of the vehicle. The footprints accelerated instantly. Their cadence didn't change. No strain, no variation. Just a seamless increase in distance covered with each step, always maintaining that same fixed gap ahead of me. They weren't following. They were matching. I became aware of how quiet everything else was. No insects, no distant wind through trees. Even the engine noise felt muted, as if the air itself was swallowing sound. The only consistent thing was the rhythm of those steps. Left, right. I swallowed, my throat dry, and glanced at the rearview mirror. Nothing behind me but darkness. When I looked forward again, the footprints had shifted slightly closer. Not by much, a meter maybe, but enough that I felt it immediately, like something stepping into my personal space. I started to say, then stopped. Talking felt wrong out here. I tried to steady my breathing, focusing on the tactile details. The steering wheel, the vibration through the seat, the faint buzz of the dashboard lights. Something changed in the reflection on the windshield. At first, I thought it was just glare, some distortion from the angle of the headlights, but the longer I looked, the more it resolved into something structured. The footprints were reflected on the glass, but not correctly. In the reflection, they were closer, much closer, close enough that, if it were real, whatever was making them would be right at the front of the car. I jerked my gaze back to the road. The footprints were still ahead, at the same distance as before. I looked at the reflection again. Closer, closer than they should be. A cold sensation spread through my arms, like the feeling you get when circulation returns too quickly. I turned off the headlights. The darkness slammed in instantly, absolute and suffocating. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the footprints remained. They glowed brighter now, unchallenged by any other light source, hovering in the void where the road should have been. The rhythm continued. Left, right. I couldn't see the asphalt anymore. Couldn't see the edges of the road. Just those steps, suspended in blackness, still moving, still keeping pace. I turned the headlights back on. The road snapped into existence again. But something was wrong with it. The texture looked inconsistent. Smooth in some places, rough in others, like overlapping surfaces that didn't quite align. The painted center line was gone. I couldn't remember when I'd last seen it. Had there been one? The footprints hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. The left one lifted, hovered, then set down slightly off from its previous path, as if correcting itself. I felt a chill run down my spine. They're adjusting, I whispered. As if in response, the next few steps shifted subtly, aligning more precisely with the lane I was occupying. Not the road. Me. I tightened my grip on the wheel, knuckles whitening. My thoughts began to spiral, each one feeding into the next. If they could match speed, if they could adjust position, what were they using as reference? The car? The headlights? Or, I looked down at my hands. When I looked back up, the footprints had moved again. Closer. Close enough now that I could make out more detail within the glow, faint impressions like the suggestion of toes, the curve of a heel. Human unmistakably. But still no body. No shadow. Nothing casting them. The reflection in the windshield shifted. Now the footprints there weren't just closer. They were under the edge of the hood. I inhaled sharply, my breath fogging the glass for a split second. When it cleared, the reflection didn't match the road at all. In the reflection, the footprints weren't ahead. They were alongside, keeping pace with my driver's side door. I turned my head slowly, the motion feeling heavy, resisted. The side window showed only darkness. No glow, no movement. I forced myself to look forward again. The footprints were still ahead, but the rhythm had changed. Left, right, pause. Left, right, pause. Like something was listening, learning. My pulse pounded in my ears. I realized, distantly, that the car's speedometer hadn't moved in several minutes. It was stuck just under 100, the needle perfectly still despite the subtle pressure changes in my foot. Time felt stretched, or maybe compressed. Couldn't tell. The footprints took another step, then stopped. Both of them. For the first time since they appeared, they didn't move. I kept driving, the car rolling forward, closing the distance. The glow didn't fade. It grew. The outlines sharpened, the light intensifying as I approached, until the shapes were almost painfully bright against the dark asphalt. I wanted to brake. I didn't. Something held me there, a quiet certainty that stopping would be worse. The front of the car passed over the first footprint. There was no sound, no bump, no sensation at all. But in the reflection on the windshield, I saw it. The footprint didn't pass beneath the car. It climbed. It pressed upward against the invisible surface of the hood in the reflection, as if the geometry of the world had folded, bringing it closer. The second footprint followed. And then, in the reflection, they turned. Not forward, toward me. I felt it then, not physically but unmistakably. Presence shifting orientation. Attention focusing. The rhythm resumed, but slower now. Deliberate. Measured. The next step in the reflection landed on the glass itself, inches from where my eyes were fixed. There was still nothing on the actual windshield. Only the reflection. But the glow bled through, faint and wrong, illuminating the interior in pulses. Left. The light flared. Right. Closer. My hands trembled on the wheel. I didn't dare look away, didn't dare blink. Another step. The reflection showed it landing on the dashboard. Another. Closer still, climbing through impossible space, bridging the gap between outside and in without crossing anything real. I realized, with a slow, sinking certainty, that it wasn't trying to reach the car. It was trying to reach the perspective. Me. The final step hovered in the reflection, suspended just before my face. For a moment, everything stopped. The car, the sound, the world beyond the glass. Then the glow shifted, narrowing, refining, as if focusing, studying. And in that stillness, I understood something I hadn't before. The footprints hadn't been following me. They had been learning how to move where I could see them. The last thing I remember is the reflection adjusting one final time, placing a step exactly where my eyes were, and realizing too late that the next step wouldn't need the road at all.